Good morning.
Good morning.
Today is Monday. We usually do class on Sunday, but sometimes we do Monday based on scheduling and stuff. Monday, January 23rd, 2023. Let's set our intentions, make aspirations by saying the four immeasurables prayer. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. Okay. So we will. I'm gonna put some little more light on. Sorry. That's better. All right. We're gonna meditate, and Victoria is going to speak a little bit, and then we'll leave the last. We're gonna end right at 11 today. And we'll do some questions at like quarter of. I'm not gonna talk really, but I did read one thing that was very interesting. There's a teacher named James Low, Low, who teaches. He's actually a psychiatrist in London, at a public hospital in London, and he's a student of Tibetan Buddhism as well. And he's written some books, primarily commentaries on Tibetan Buddhist teachings. He's very interesting. If you Google his name, James Low, Buddhism, there's some great videos. And we talk about non-duality in this class, which is such a vast, strange, difficult concept to talk about, but he has a video about it from a Buddhist, perspective, and it's very, very good. If you're interested, James Low, non-duality, and his teaching on Dzogchen, which I won't even get into talking about, but Dzogchen. He's really interesting. But he said something in the commentary of the book I'm reading, and that Buddhism does not revolve around humanism, but revolves around awareness, basically. So the idea of kind of cultivating awareness, mindful awareness, through meditation and through Dharma practice is really what we're talking about. It's really kind of the crux of what we're doing. And I've said this before, but it's not about being a good meditator. Meditation is a method towards working with the mind. It's not about, meditation's not like a sport, like, marathon running where you're trying to be a good runner or something like that. It's not an end unto itself. We should keep that in mind. With that, let's do exactly that, meditate. We haven't done a review of the 9 breath purification, but we could do that today. Victoria, if you want to take us through that, and then we'll go into a brief meditation session.
Where basically the 9 breath purification is becoming aware of one's base physical construction, construction that's kind of between the subtle and the gross, like the semiconductor, and that is the network of the 3 main channels, white, red, and blue wisdom channel in the center. These 3 channels carry the energy of white carries anger, red carries desire, and the blue channel carries wisdom, carries ignorance that when purified becomes wisdom. And our energetic wheels are also located on that central channel. From the central channel, our body is permeated with what we know as our nervous system, but the subtle channels, they're not necessarily the nerves, but the more subtle channels through which our energy and our awareness moves. It's called, in Buddhism, we refer to it as wind, but the wind and awareness are merged together. So we practice with the three channels in order to exhale the staleness and to purify these three channels so that uh, uh, the energy of wisdom can move through the channels, and so that we understand ourselves in a less gross way, but on the energetic level. So first we start with the right hand, the Vajra finger under the right elbow, uh, uh, blocking a negative, the negative flow of energy. And we inhale and exhale 3 times. And so we cleared the channel of our anger. We inhaled the pure, and exhaled the stale. Inhale the pure, exhale the stale. We cleared our red channel of desire and attachment. We cleared our white channel of anger and aversion, and holding the Vajra fists, placing it on our knees, we're going to inhale the pure and exhale the stale from our central wisdom channel. We're exhaling ignorance. On the last inhale, we take in the energy of wisdom into our wisdom channel. But when we exhale, we exhale through our crown protrusion, through the Brahma aperture, and then we merge with all. At that time, when we exhale, we can bring up the green bindu at our heart center. We can bring it all the way up, and then we merge consciousness with space on the last exhale.
Let's take that right into this meditation. using our mind to become aware of what the mind is doing. We're using the mind to look at the mind, seeing what's arising, thoughts, emotions, sensations, becoming aware that they're there, then using our mind to shift our attention back to the breath, often going to the place where the air moves between the nose and upper lip, or we imagine the thought, seeing the thought as a cloud that has arisen in the limitless, clear, stainless blue sky of our mind. That is the nature of our mind, and the cloud, which is the thought or the emotion, the sensation, dissolves back into that sky, limitless, clear sky, from where it arose without leaving a trace. And then you can settle into that clarity, settle into that calm, settle into that openness, spaciousness, and breathe into it, breathe with it. We're not fighting the arising of thoughts and emotions and sensations. We're not judging them. We're not pushing them away. We're recognizing where that they are arising, or the point from where they arise. See them, catching them, leaving them where they are. Not following the story, not judging the story, not pushing it away. It's not a bad meditation if you're thinking. That's what the mind does. We're working with the thoughts. We're working with the emotions. back to the breath. You're getting lost in that kind of chain of thought. This continual recognition of the thought and then letting it go. That's how we work with the thought. Right. I think what you'll find, through this practice a lot is, you start to see what's going on and how your thoughts work and what thoughts are arising and how much of that is projection. How much we're projecting onto, the outer experience, the people we come in contact and interact with, the situations, and a lot of that we're bringing our own past experiences, we're bringing our own hopes and fears and failures and successes to all these things, and the thoughts are often these projected ideas that really are just, they're our own very subjective point of view based on our own thing. They're not the actual real thing that's happening. So it's almost like a movement from projection to presence. Is when we let go of that projection, recognize it, let it go, and then realize that there's this base of freedom and clarity and calm spaciousness, and settling into that, we have just this pure presence. It's that interplay and moving from projection back to that presence and openness and spaciousness where you can actually maybe start to see a little bit of what's really going on. That's basically what we're doing. So now there's a Q&A function. If you don't know it, you can ask questions about the practice or about whatever Victoria is going to speak about now, or whatever I spoke about. So you can ask questions about any of those things. We're going to Victoria is going to speak for about 20 minutes, and then we'll go for questions. Okay.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending. And it's wonderful that all of us are here to give an hour of our life to practice. So I wanted to just briefly touch on something very, very simple in Buddhism, what we call compounded phenomena. Basically, it's a art term in Buddhism. Compounded phenomena are everything that we know. Another word for compounded phenomena is something we've been speaking for several weeks now. It also means constructs. We know things as constructs, physical phenomena, a chair, a table. We know that there is a tree that was the source of it. We know that there was a woodsman who cut the tree. We know that there is a factory that made slabs of that tree. We know that there was a designer who made design of the tree for the table or the chair. We know there was an upholsterer. We know there was paint and the painter. We know there was fabric and the upholsterer. There were nails. There were all these kinds of things. So for one thing to come into the world, many, many kinds of things are necessary. But on a physical level, all compounded phenomena can be reduced to to the 5 elements, actually 4 elements, and space being the 5th, which is where all things abide in space. Space is, not just where things abide, but space is a part of us. The fact that we have space to breathe, we have space in our lungs, we have space in our, channels, et cetera, et cetera. We have space in our stomach so we can ingest and digest. But we share the 5 elements. We share wind, fire, water, and earth with all things in the universe. Whether the universe is our universe or another distant star or something that is going to be born in the future, all of these things will be made up of the same elemental structure, not in an identical proportion. So if we come upon, fire-breathing dragons, they will be made up of much more fire element. Fish are made up of much more water element. Sky creatures are made up of much more of earth element. Of wind element, and we're made up probably of much more of the earth element. We are processes. These elements, when they're bound, they're not stationary. They're always constantly changing. We are always breathing in air. If we stop for a moment, we'll cease to exist. If we stop eating and intaking the earth elements, we will stop to exist. If we stop drinking, we will stop to exist. If our fire inside our system does not break down and digest and eliminate, we will stop to exist. And the digestive system for us is both fire in the breaking down and the wind pushing it down. We are constant processes, so are all the other things. It's interchange of elemental things. One of the, or multitude of the elements come into us, where they're ingested, they're appropriated. We shed skin, and new skin is born on us all the time. And this is something that we can see that ubiquitously we share with all physical things in the universe. That is one way of looking at compounds, the physical things, the physical structures. One of those compounds are our own bodies, undergoing constant processes of renewal, ingestion, and renewal, and a process of becoming. To be alive is to be becoming all the time, nonstop. Our bodies cannot stop the flow of becoming, the flow of changing. They have to renew and revive and eliminate and become new again all the time. In fact, our physical systems are often seen by scientists as colonies of small microorganisms. They too share exactly the same kind of elemental structure in different proportions, but you can see how the interdependence and at the same time sharing with all things and all beings on this level, our body, as well as all the other physical things in the universe, are shared. That's one way of looking at compounds. And whatever has come before us, whatever will come in the future of us, whether we meet alien nations that are made up of proportionately different things, we will still share the elemental structure. So to the elemental structure, what are other kinds of compounds? Thoughts are compounds. Feelings are compounds. Because for us, there is no object that is also not partially made up of identity that we create out of a mental element. When we encounter an object, we usually have a name. We understand its color. We understand its shape. We understand its proportion. We understand where it's spatially related to us. So for us, experience is taking this elemental structure and putting it into a cohesive conceptual structure. Concepts are also compounds. They're made out of lots of parts, and they come and go. They renew all the time. They're here and then they're gone. One arises, then one ceases. But what is always constantly there is the space of awareness within which all experience, phenomenal and conceptual and strung together, always happens. For us, of course, all physical experiences, because they're experience. The word experience presupposes that physical things are happening within conceptual space. We don't experience things without identifying them, relating them to ourselves, etc., etc. In fact, our entire the construct of identity that's loosely strung by this word I that we pretty much never examine is a continuous structure of creating these constructs of identity. Right now, I'm peaceful. I'm sitting in my room. I'm doing what I call meditating. I'm pondering on this and this. And then suddenly there's a knock on the door. And all of this changes. Now, I am now restructured my compound of sitting here and being a meditator and feeling my energy being very peaceful and open and wide. Suddenly everything hones in into what is accompanied by me hearing this physical phenomenon of a sound, and I become, and my identity changes into me, who now is the listener and someone who has to assess that I have to go to the door, I have to open the door, and what's on the other side. So what I'm trying to say is, for us, what we truly, truly know is that flow of awareness, which takes on all of these different structures, which are constantly accompanying or happening within the space of awareness. That's why last week we talked about the identity of going into the office, the identity of speaking to a friend, the identity of a subway rider. I am a father, I am a student, I am a teacher, I am a listener of music, etc., etc. These are all the types of identities that take place within the openness of our awareness. Our conceptual capacity is to be able to construct all these strings of identities within any given moment in conjunction with what is happening out there. Like me being a listener and thinking I have to go and open the door. I've constructed on the spot an identity which will answer to that situation, just as I'm trying to construct an identity now of sitting and meditating and finding the openness without all this construction, simply trying to look at the energy, uncompounded energy, without the construct over it, like me having to get up and open the door. So what Michael was saying, what James Lowe made a point of, that practice is not about humanities. Humanities are conceptual sciences. There are ways of communicating in the world, and there are patterns of social norms. So Buddhism is not about social norms. Buddhism is about awareness. And everything takes place within the space of awareness. Awareness is usually described by masters with two terms, which are supposed to be always understood as union. But the two qualities that are the emergence of what is, how awareness is seen, and that is emptiness, or I prefer to say openness, infinite, unobstructed openness, because I can sit here and be meditating and speaking to you, and when I hear the knock, immediately I am able to construct another kind of an identity that is listening over there and is prepared to do something else. So we have this unimpeded openness because I can construct and be anything at any given moment. If I hear a fire siren, I on the spot can create a different identity and be prepared to either extinguish the fire, leave the building, et cetera, save the people. So the emptiness, what is referred to as emptiness, is this infinite openness that can construct itself into anything on the spot. And the other one is clarity. Clarity speaks to the ability of the mind to be cognizant. So if I have the open space to hear the knock on the door, or I have space to hear the fire siren, I am open. The other thing is that I can be cognizant of it. And those two things are always coming together. And everything that we know, everything we refer to as experience of phenomenal physical things and experience of more abstract conceptual things, constructs of conceptual nature, all that happens within the space of awareness. And in meditation, we try first, as beginners, we simply try to bring down the fluff so that we can look at the space of awareness on its own. And also within that space of awareness, we can become aware of feelings arising, thoughts arising, emotions arising, in order so that we can become familiar with the quality of our energy, because ultimately, we and all things are energy. It is my energy that is able to become the person who's going to open the door. It is my energy who's able to sit here and communicate. My energy who, when hearing the fire alarm, is prepared to do something else. My energy is merging. My body is not becoming, and I'm not changing immediately into like a fireman or the runner to the door. I'm still here. It is my mind that has transformed. It is my awareness where the change has taken place. So in meditation, we try to get to the mind without any projection, just the open space, the open quality of the nature of mind. Because the projections and things that happen, those are what we call the workings of the mind, the rising of up and down, things arising like waves on the ocean and dissolving. And if we have patience, for example, we experience our energy as angry. But if we have skillful means, we can sit it out, wait it out, and the storms die down. And we will get to see that these things come, rise, and go. Everything rises only to disappear. Everything arises only to disappear, because ultimately the space of awareness will always remain. And within the space of awareness, all these productions will happen. James Lowe used the term, I don't know if maybe I used the term or he used the term, soap operas, the soap opera of, having breakfast with my kids, the soap opera of sitting in a classroom, in college, soap opera of being the teacher in that same classroom, soap opera of going into the office and talking to my superiors, the soap opera of talking to my underlings, soap opera of taking the subway, soap opera of riding in the car. All these soap operas, all these plays are able to take place because of the space of awareness. It's different space than just space. The space of awareness, the element of space is intrinsic to the space of awareness. In other words, everything we see in terms of elemental things, the 5 elements, including physical space, is contained within the space of awareness. That's how we experience. That's why we're able to do it. The capacity of the space of awareness, which is the subtle kind of space. It's awareness. It's not space in the physical sense, like I am next to this bed, or I am next to Michael, the physical spaciousness. All things can arise and fall or change. We should say the falling is when things arise as something, and then they're already beginning to transform. The energy comes down and then arises again as something else. And then it arises again as something else, and it arises something else. This is what we try to see and try to understand, become familiar with the mind, gom, meditation, becoming familiar with the mind. We see these comings and goings, but we see it all happening in the space of our awareness. Conclusions to be drawn out of this. All things that arise are impermanent. If I am very angry now and I want to kill you now, if I abide in that moment and I can just sit with that moment, I will watch that emotions subside and turn into something else. Because if the doorbell rings, I'll drop this and I'll be ready. I will reconstruct myself already into a construct of a person who's ready to go open the door. This is conclusion number 1. But the biggest conclusion that we have to draw from observing the nature of the mind, the space of awareness and the movement of awareness, what we call appearances, the movement of awareness. What we also discover in meditation, the big takeaway is that we can be present or we can be absent. We are absent when we project. When instead of experiencing the chair, I project the concept of the chair, and then every chair is a chair. Million chairs are just a chair, so I'm not experiencing, I'm not flopping myself into a chair going, oh, this is nice. Oh, this is beautiful. Someone wonderful made that with a great vision. We become very closed when we constantly live in projection. The beauty of meditation is by observing the space of awareness and the work of awareness, the rising and falling of appearances, is that we can be present because we can become more loose with each construct that arises. We now know that constructs are impermanent and they rise only to fall. If I am angry now, I could be very happy 3 minutes later. If I'm very, very angry at someone and then my telephone rings and someone says, you won the lottery, you have, $3 million, the change will be instantaneous, I guarantee you. But there are more subtle ways of these changes, and that's what we experience in meditation. So there are many takeaways from meditation. The impermanence of rising and falling can give us the courage to be patient and to be skillful, have wait, have diligence in practice, and have generosity, and exercise really the mind as opposed to just habitual patterns. We can wait out the storms of anger, hatred, and aversion. We can wait out impatience. We can wait out all of these kinds of, we can wait out the desire and grasping, and we can bring ourselves back to the space of awareness. We can remember, the lesson is that we can remember that the most difficult things can turn into most beautiful things. We can also keep in mind that if we watch to the end of the movie, this something that began as horror can end as something tremendously good and positive. We just have to know it within this. We can only discover it within watching appearances arise and transform within the space of awareness. But just remember, this is what practice is. Practice is not creating more constructs, creating more projections. Practice is dropping projections, reducing ignorance, reducing the constructs, like working back, deconstructing to get back to the space of awareness. And this awareness is always, it's always intact. It is uncompounded, and it does not have these emotions that arise in conjunction with our ego, how we process things through this I. The space of awareness has always been with us, will always be with us, is unstained and primordially pure. This is what is referred to as our Buddha nature. And it is very important to understand that all experience is in order to attain the space, and then also and it's together, goes always together with the desire to liberate all sentient beings, not only human, but all sentient beings of the 6 realms, to finding this state and then abiding in it, not just on tiny little, moments, but abiding in that state of mind and abiding in that happiness.
Thank you very much. You want to take some questions for the remainder of class, either on Victoria's topic or the practice or whatever, anything you've heard here in the past. What if you can't find the clear sky or open spaciousness? Is stillness enough? I think you have to start to think of them as the same thing. Clear sky, I mean, obviously there's no clear sky. We're using clear sky as a way to relate to the nature of our mind, right? So you're using an imagination almost of seeing a clear sky in front of you. If that is, imagination kind of too unstable for you, the open spaciousness and stillness you start to think of those as the same thing. Stillness is not just the important thing is it's not just a physical thing, right? Now we're creating a posture and a pose here that has a centeredness, a stillness, an attentiveness. That's a physical thing. The body's still, and you're breathing, and you're trying to now look at the mind and find some stillness within the mind. But if you do find stillness, just know that that is spaciousness. Try not to think of it as something outside you that you have to get. Think of the spaciousness and the stillness as something that's your baseline, that's your true nature. I think rather than something you have to get, something that meditation is going to give you that you don't have. You know, fundamental foundation in Buddhism is that we all have Buddha nature within us. And it's our obscurations from our karma, from our habitual patterns of mind for, many lives that obscure us from really living from that place of Buddha nature. And meditation is kind of, we're going backwards, like Victoria said almost. We're going backwards to that, to taste that, to get kind of a glimpse and a little aroma of that, complete enlightenment. But we're touching it, we're tasting it through this stillness, which also has openness, which also has spaciousness, and as Victoria said, clarity and openness, or clarity and emptiness. And clarity means that sense of cognizance. So it's not just a void of spaciousness, it's kind of alive. That spaciousness is imbued with, that awareness is imbued with the ability to be aware. So we're not just these spaced out creatures. We're almost pulsing with this energy of cognizance we can experience. We're not saying that emotions and thoughts are bad. You know what I mean? That we're moving into a place where we're just kind of this, spaced out, non-thinking, non-feeling creatures. We're starting to work with these things and see what exactly is happening. Why are we thinking these things? Why, when I interact with this person, I immediately have an aversion to them, and I want to, win the argument, or I don't want to be generous to that person. Yet this person I want to be generous to. It's like we're trying to see what's going on. If that makes sense. Would you like to add to that?
I just want to say stillness is a wonderful, necessary first step. When you can experience your mind still on that backdrop, you can start to see how when the emotions arise and fall, it's like a empty movie screen. This way you can start to watch the mind. So it's a wonderful, great first step. It'll be a step that always will accompany all practice. And if you're feeling stable in that space, now ask yourself, use the portion of the meditation that's called, we have the shamatha, which is calm abiding, and we have the analytical meditation. The analytical, we ask, who is watching? Who is experiencing the stillness? And then find this open cognizance. And those two things are the nature of mind. The stillness and the awareness quality. Those two things, that's our mind. So rest in the stillness and then try to go through it to find what experiences this stillness, and find nothing. Find the open awareness that experiences this stillness. That is a really, really great accomplishment.
I have heard of transcendental meditation centers in New York City. Now, I don't know, I'll be honest with you, I don't know anything about transcendental meditation. I don't know the practice. I'm sure some people get a lot out of it. I've heard that they do, so I don't really know what that is. I can't really speak to it. If meditating frequently enough, is physical levitation possible? I would first say, why would you think physical levitation is important? For one thing, I don't know if it's possible or not. I do know that advanced spiritual practitioners do, realize certain kind of supernatural, if you will, qualities, like it could be something like clairvoyance, or the ability to kind of cover long distances or appear in places where they're not, that kind of thing. But the lamas always say those kind of results from practice are very minor in comparison to the greatest of all kind of, those are called siddhis, those kind of uh, abilities and results that come out of practice, accomplishments. The greatest of all accomplishments is bodhicitta, which is the realization of that, transcendent loving heart, of limitless compassion.
Bodhicitta is also the word for mind of enlightenment.
The mind of enlightenment
So,
as well.
the mind of enlightenment has a quality that we sometimes refer to as the heart of enlightenment, because mind and heart are actually centered at our heart center energetically. And there is only one siddhi accomplishment that is important, and that's enlightenment, or the mind of enlightenment, or the heart of enlightenment. For Buddhists, it's kind of an interchangeable. Mind and heart are interchangeable, because the mind of enlightenment, the appearance rising and falling, those kinds of things within the spaciousness of mind that arise and fall, the activity of mind of enlightenment is compassion. So they're always, it's one and the same thing. It's like the warmth of the sun or the brightness of the sun. We cannot separate them. Other accomplishments are not talked about because they arise. And for people that have true mastery of mind and have pierced and penetrated through many levels of ignorance and have purified, they will have things like
Clairvoyance.
of course, those are natural signs, but one doesn't talk about them because they can become very distracted. They will never be an aim onto themselves, because that's a very mundane aim, and mundane aims will not lead to enlightenment.
Exactly, and those things should not. You shouldn't have attachment to those things or seek them as a goal, as Victoria is saying, because the most highest accomplishment is that cultivation of that bodhicitta, which is the union of that kind of emptiness and spaciousness and compassion. How do you get your mind back to peace if interrupted? It's the same thing as really what we're practicing. When you're sitting and you're in your meditation posture and you're breathing, and a thought comes, and then we go back to the breath. We go back to the watching the mind. It's the same thing. If you're interrupted, like the doorbell rings, maybe you have to go get it. Well, you go get it. Try to be mindful as you go get it. You know what I mean? Try to keep that spaciousness, and then you go back. Now you've been interrupted. What do? You go back to the breath. You go back to the same exact practice. It's the same practice. It's not something different. You again center yourself. Go back to the breath. Go back to the mind, looking at the mind, seeing what's happening there, becoming aware that a thought has arisen, and whatever thought has arisen in relation to the interruption, and start to work with that.
And also, meditating does not mean sitting down in a certain position, does not mean sitting or anything else. Meditating means having your awareness in all your movements and in everything we engage in. When we sit is when we say we are dedicating our body, speech, and mind now to meditation, to trying to pierce through the ignorance into the light of awareness. That's when we can give all of ourselves. But it doesn't mean that when we arise and participate in all things of life, that we don't bring our awareness with us. And to bring your awareness, like Michael said, do it on the breath. Bring your breath and come back to meditation.
How often should one meditate? That's a very good question that people ask all the time. The best thing you can do is start to make it a regular, daily practice, as like, if you exercise, or anything that you decide to do as make it part of your daily routine. It doesn't have to be for long, at least in the beginning. It can be just for a couple of minutes. It may help to inspire you to do it regularly, to have a little corner of your house dedicated to that with something inspiring. Maybe it's a flower or a picture of the Buddha or a view out the window, or some incense holder that you like, that you light an incense before. Make it regular. That's really, really, really the key. So I would say, and if like you can't because you're working or you're traveling or your schedule just doesn't permit, don't beat yourself up for it. Do it the next day. But you know, it has to get results from this, and progress. It has to become something regular.
And morning and night are very special times to meditate. The first thing in the morning, setting your intention. Also in the morning, the energy is very, very subtle. It's still not laden with all the projections and all the I have to do this and da 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 and then all this. Morning, your mind is very flexible, and that's a good time to train it. And at night, before you go to sleep, if you wish to have a meditative quality of sleep, empty out the tank, do the 9 breath purification, and set your intentions, do the 4 immeasurables, little meditation practice, and the energy of sleep can also become a space for meditation.
What is your favorite grounding technique for when you're having a hard time settling into meditative state? We're talking about those techniques. That's what we're using. There's not another technique. There's becoming aware of the breath, going back to the breath, focusing there. We use that visualization of the sky and the clouds. And then, the more kind of difficult one that really, if you've been doing it a while, is really just settling into the nature. You're settling into the idea of the mind looking at the mind and seeing what's going on. But that's really it. There's not another grounding technique. You know what I mean? There's no grounding technique as opposed to meditation technique. It's really about habituating these things that we're doing in the class. I think you have to, what you should think about is your sentence here, when you're having a hard time settling into a meditative state. You're kind of separating meditative state and hard time. We're not just going to sit in our posture and all of a sudden be in this thoughtless, wide open space for 45 minutes immediately. That's not going to happen, pretty much, unless, you're already born some kind of high lama or something like that. The meditative state is the practice. It's not, the meditative state is not just this non-thought moment. The meditative state is meditation, is the practice. Some days it may be a lot of thoughts, like an avalanche of thought to thought and thought, and you have to keep applying a technique and keep going back to and you may get lost in the thought for a while. Some days the flow of thought is less, but it's not about saying this is a bad day, this is a good day. It's really about doing it and working with the practice.
And I wanted to say Buddha gave 84,000 teachings because of the 84,000 combinations of the 5 afflictive emotions. So 84,000 teachings are the 84,000 methods. There are many methods. But you can find something that really helps you by experimenting with things. Read opening prayers, make them into a big part of your practice. The 4 thoughts that turn the mind, different aspiration prayers. Maybe, to get into the practice, you need to really hone in on thinking first, the importance of the practice, thinking about the preciousness of human birth, because as humans, we are at the intersection. We can go into lower realms and we can go into higher realms, meaning we can go deeper into ignorance, we can go up the ladder into awareness. Maybe first use your conceptual mind to come into that more spacious mind.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. If you have questions that you really need to get answered, you can send them to our Gmail. Nick, what's the Gmail account? And meantime, we're going to dedicate the merit from today's class, whatever merit as individuals or group that has been generated from this class, we dedicate it to the benefit of all beings by saying this prayer. By this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. The email is Michael Imperioli Meditation 101. Michael Imperioli Meditation 101 at Gmail. Thank you, Nick Solidio, our producer. Without his generosity and kindness, we would not be able to do this. We will see you next week.